This video will be about Wi-Fi and internet security. And in this video, first I'm going to talk about the dangers of using public Wi-Fi. Second, I'm going to talk about how to protect yourself when browsing on the internet, doing internet searches, going to websites, etc. And then finally, we'll go into the general best practices with using Wi-Fi and public internet and just the internet in general. First of all, the dangers of using public Wi-Fi. So one of the common dangers of using public Wi-Fi is potentially a fake public Wi-Fi network set up by a hacker or just a general attacker. And so an example of a type of attack that might be used for this, or this type of attack, is called an evil twin attack. This is where the attacker would have some device, some sort of router that's set up with the same name as a public Wi-Fi network, like coffee shop Wi-Fi, and that's what this Wi-Fi is called, so they name it exactly the same. And then after that, so there's people probably connected to this network. So this attacker would then send what's called packets to that network saying disconnect everyone on that network. So what that would do, as I just said, it would disconnect everyone who's connected to that network, to that router. It would just disconnect them. They are no longer connected. So then people would probably still be wanting to use the Wi-Fi, so they would go and reconnect. But here's the thing. So now there's two Wi-Fi networks with the same name. So the attacker's hoping that some of these, or at least some of these people, would connect to their router instead of the actual public Wi-Fi router. So then when this happens, if they do connect to there, now they can start gathering information on these devices and on these users. So they might be sniffing packets where they're like, as these packets are going from their computer to the router and out to the internet, they could be gathering the information that's being sent over the network. And this is dangerous because that user might be sending personal information over the network, and which therefore the attacker could now potentially see. So as you can see, that kind of covered those bullets there on the side where, again, they can steal your information and or potentially get into your accounts. Because if you're transmitting passwords, if for some reason that password is being sent in plain text, or if the attacker is able to break the password, then they're into your accounts. So protecting yourself on the internet. First of all, use the antivirus, because when you're on the internet, when you're clicking links, you could potentially be downloading malware or other forms of malware. So using antivirus will help protect your computer from any potential malware that might be trying to be installed. And again, you're not intentionally installing malware, but for the most part, unless you're not gonna go out there and be like, I'm gonna download this malware. It's probably like you're out there clicking on links and you don't know that this link is malicious, and then download something. So that antivirus will help protect you against that. Second of all, if you're on a public Wi-Fi, first of all, do not give out personal information if you can avoid it. Because when you're on public Wi-Fi, it's an unsecured network for the most part, unless they have it where there is a password. But a lot of Wi-Fi's out there at these like public shops will usually just be open and public for anyone to connect to. So avoid at all costs giving out personal information over these networks. But also not only that, but also on untrusted sites. So if you're going to a site and it's using HTTP, do not transmit personal information if you can over. I would just not transmit any personal information over the site because it's not using the secure protocol. So you should only be transmitting that personal information over sites that begin with HTTPS. That is the secure version of the HTTP protocol, which is the protocol that is used to send internet packets back and forth between your device and the router, and then eventually to the server where the website's hosted. So just be on the lookout for that, making sure you're on trusted sites, making sure you're on secure sites before you're transmitting that personal information. And then finally, I'm going to go into best practices of using Wi-Fi. So if at all possible, avoid using public Wi-Fi. So if you have an option to set up a personal hotspot on your phone, that might be a better idea, because then it's not on a public Wi-Fi, it's on your own personal little Wi-Fi hotspot there. And if you even want to protect yourself even more, you could consider using a virtual private network or VPN. That's what that stands for. And so that creates even more privacy where it's going through a secure network at all times. It's going to different, all your messages or all your internet traffic is encrypted and a lot harder for someone to try to see and decrypt and all that. So it generally does create extra privacy there for you. Also, just being careful of the networks you connect to. Just like, again, if you can, avoid public Wi Fi, but whenever you're connecting, just be cognizant of networks that you're connecting to and what information and what actions you're performing on that network. And last of all, again, do not put any personal information or use any sensitive sites such as banking when using public Wi Fi. That's just going to be general best practice that you should follow if at all possible, because if you're, especially like banking, because that, like, not only banking, but that is like an example of one that you really want to protect. You don't want that password getting out there. You do not want hackers getting into that account. So it's a very good idea to make sure that trying to avoid using those types of services on a public Wi-Fi. So this does conclude this video on Wi-Fi and internet security. So again, just make sure follow these best practices when at all possible, and this will help keep you safe.